Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sherman, I want to ask you about our sanctions strategy. This country is committed to making sure that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon and to protecting our allies in the region, including Israel. As a country, there's a broad consensus that we should keep all options open and on the table, but that a negotiated solution is far superior to war. Now, a recent report from the Bipartisan Iran Project, a group of former diplomats and national security experts, has identified how a system of sanctions work. They describe it as strong sanctions are a stick that gets the Iranians to the negotiating table, and once they come to the table and start negotiating, strong sanctions are a carrot. That is, we can remove those sanctions in exchange for Iran giving up a nuclear program. That means for our sanctions strategy to work, it has to be possible not only to put sanctions in place, but also to take them away if the Iranians want to make a deal. If the sanctions can't be easily reversed, that is, if they face sanctions no matter what, then the Iranians won't give up their nuclear program. So I support tough, strong sanctions because I think they're necessary to make the strategy work. But what I want to know, Ms. Sherman, is whether you're confident that the sanctions that are currently in place are structured so that the administration can reverse those sanctions as part of reaching a negotiated agreement.
Thank you, Senator. It's a very, actually quite sophisticated and important question. We have spent a considerable amount of time in preparing for the P5+1 negotiations to look at every single sanction and figure out what we would do and how we could indeed take them off. Some are easier than others. All of them could ultimately be removed either by executive action or congressional action, but of course it's preferable that there be a way within the existing legislation or the existing EO to do so as opposed to having to pass new legislation to accomplish that. So your point is extremely well taken, and as Undersecretary Cohen said in the last P5+1 negotiation, for the first time, Iran was very, very vocal about its desire to have sanctions removed, particularly financial and oil sanctions, which are, of course, connected to each other in terms of viability. And we are not in any rush, of course, to remove any sanction until we see concrete, verifiable results that can be monitored and cannot be reversed.
Well, I very much appreciate that. I'm sure you've seen the report from the International Crisis Group in which they had looked at sanctions, evaluated those sanctions in terms of how easy it would be to remove them on a scale of 1 to 4, and found that of the congressional, all 9 of the laws we've passed are Category 4, 4 being the toughest to reverse, and that of the executive orders, 7 have been codified and are also now rated as a 4, very tough to reverse. I raise this because I think it's something we need to focus on. The goal is to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and I support strong sanctions because I think they're necessary to make this strategy work. But if the Iranians see that the sanctions can't be lifted, then they will be only more firmly entrenched in pursuing nuclear weapons. In other words, badly designed sanctions might actually increase the likelihood of Iran getting a nuclear weapon or increase the likelihood of war. We have broad consensus in this country that we would prefer a negotiated solution in the Middle East, and if badly designed sanctions are going to increase the likelihood of Iran developing a nuclear weapon, then we need to focus on now how to fix that. So thank you very much. I have one other area I want to ask about. Mr. Cohen, when you last appeared before the committee, we had a discussion about the government's enforcement against HSBC for laundering hundreds of millions of dollars over at least a 6-year period. They were helping drug lords, and they were also helping people who were evading the sanctions against Iran. Now, Treasury's response was to settle for a fine, a very big fine, over $1 billion. But some of us wondered why the government didn't take HSBC to trial, or at least look at imposing stronger penalties, including closing down the bank in the U.S. for a period of time, or banning certain HSBC employees and executives from banking. Last week, Public Citizen released some internal Treasury emails that it received in response to a FOIA request. The documents were heavily redacted, but there were a couple of things that were clear. First, in the fall of last year, Treasury officials were suddenly quite anxious to settle with HSBC. After years of violations, a Treasury working group was quickly set up to scour through the violations, and senior Treasury officials were assured that the enforcement officials, quote, were moving as quickly as possible to put together administrative penalty actions. The second thing that's clear from the documents is that at the same time, state officials of New York were starting to press forward with charges of their own against HSBC. The emails show that reporters began to contact Treasury about rumors that its senior officials had discouraged the Justice Department from leveling any criminal charges, and the emails show that Treasury officials were suddenly talking about, in their words, atmospherics. So I have a couple of questions, Mr. Cohen. Since you played a key role in the HSBC conversations, HSBC actions had been going on for years. Why all of a sudden was Treasury interested in enforcement only in the fall of 2012? Was it because of what Ben Lawsky, New York Superintendent of Banks, referred to last week as a dose of healthy competition among the regulators? What was the sudden urgency? What was Treasury trying to get out in front of? And I'll ask you to be brief because I know I'm over my time, Mr. Chairman.
So, Senator, I think what you're reading into the emails is inaccurate. There was no special urgency that was first felt in the fall of last year to resolve the HSBC matter.
Let me just stop you there. The language in your own emails, from the small part that's left over that was not redacted, is that they are moving as quickly as possible to put together administrative actions. They seem to see the urgency, and they start talking about the atmospherics of a settlement. Can you just explain what that means?
Yeah, so I don't believe any of these emails are mine, but I've looked at them, and I can tell you from my own experience being in the department last year and over the last several years, the investigation of HSBC was proceeding. It had reached a conclusion. It was time to resolve the action, and that's what happened.
So you're saying that what was happening in New York had nothing to do with it? You weren't trying to get in front of anything?
That's not my recollection.
And the word atmospherics means what in this context?
Senator, I don't know what you're reading from, so I can't answer that question.
Well, I'm not sure I know entirely what I'm reading for because of how redacted it is. But it's clear that Treasury was talking back and forth about the atmospherics surrounding a settlement at this point.
I'd be happy to take a look at the document. I don't have it in front of me, so I would be at a loss of trying to answer your question.
Well, I hope we both agree that the only thing that Treasury would be doing appropriately would be trying to enforce the law and making sure that the banks are enforcing these sanctions and not worrying about the atmospherics around that.
And as you noted, we have enforced these sanctions very vigorously in this case and in many others.
Well, I think we have agreed to disagree about how vigorous that is, but thank you.